I am part of this panel, and I am also going to quickly introduce and kind of moderate a little bit, but I just want to kind of let everyone know who I am. I'm Darcy Meredith. I am the co-chair with Sharon Sutherland of this conference, and I am joining you from the traditional lands of the Tsawwassen First Nation. And I am joined by a wonderful group of panelists here to talk about unconventional professional development from a whole bunch of different perspectives. So I'm gonna pass things to quickly let everyone tell you who they are a little bit, and then we will dive right in. The one thing I want to make sure everyone here knows as you're coming in, this is gonna be pretty casual and flexible, so feel free to put questions in the chat or raise a hand if you have things coming up that you really want to know a little bit more about. We're really open to making this a fun and collaborative discussion. So Laurie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Laurie Van Niekerk, and I'm honored to be working and learning on the traditional lands of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, and Kwantlen First Nations. I'm an educator. I teach in the Surrey School District, and I have taught everywhere from preschool to high school, and I teach a lot of educators of all ages and ranges as well.
Excellent. And who are you?
Hi, I'm Ann Lee. I'm the Director of Operations for Mediate BC, and I am incredibly lucky and just so thankful to be able to join you today from the traditional and ceded territories of the Kakite First Nation.
Thank you. Kelly?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Dermody. I am the managing partner of the San Francisco office of the firm Leaf, Cabraser, Hyman, and Bernstein in San Francisco. Today, I'm sitting a little north of the bay in traditional Pomo land. Very, very proud to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. Samantha.
Hi, I'm Samantha Grant. I'm a partner at Shepherd Mullen, Richter and Hampton in its Century City office, which is located in Los Angeles. And I come to you from the traditional lands of the Tongva people. And then also, I'll just throw in there that I'm Canadian and American. So it's really particularly great to be at this conference with my fellow Canadians and Americans. I really appreciate this collaboration.
Thank you. DA?
Good evening. I am DA Graham, and I am at the University of Kansas, University Ombudsperson, and also the Vice Provost for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Interim Vice Provost for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And the University of Kansas sits on land of the Kaw, the Kickapoo, the Sioux, the Osage, and Shawnee people.
Thank you. Claire? Oh, Claire, you're still muted, sorry.
Let's try again. I'm Claire Fowler, Vice President over at Mediate.com, and I recently learned that we are on the Kalapuya tribe. I'm an instructor over at the University of Oregon School of Law, and they did a huge rededication ceremony teaching us all about the tribe. So that was good to know.
Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Everybody, I'm Emily Martin. I work for the Public Employment Relations Commission in Washington State. I am here at the conference specifically as part of the Washington State Bar Association ADR section, and as part of the planning committee for the conference through that entity. I'm also very active in the American Bar Association section of labor and employment law. So I am super excited because I have that connection with some of the panelists here as well. So I am coming from the traditional lands of the coastal Salish people, specifically the Samish Indian Nation and the Swinomish Indian tribal community.
Thank you very, very much. Well, I'm gonna let Laurie jump right in and give kind of a first glance at what we're talking about. What are we doing here today?
Okay, thanks, Darcy. So I come from a bit of a unique perspective because I am not a mediator. I am an educator. I teach all ages, ranges, lots of adults, and I have attended hundreds and thousands of hours of professional development. For me, professional development is meant to engage our minds. It's meant to get us thinking, hopefully a little bit outside the box. and for us to consider new ideas, new ways of engaging in our jobs. And I don't know that it should matter what our job is. I think that when we choose to engage in professional development, it should help make us more confident and better in our chosen profession. So the thing about learning is that for all of us, it actually happens differently. Very few of us learn exclusively through listening. Most of us need some other form of engagement with material. For some of us, it's hands-on practice, role play, visuals, conversations, personal connections, humor. And all the other panelists are going to talk a lot about various aspects of that. I want to talk mostly about why. Why is it important that we do that? Because for a lot of us, we all have higher education. We are learners. We've become used to just sitting in lectures. We can listen, we can take notes, and we can do something with it. I would argue that the fact that we can do it this way doesn't mean it's actually the best way for us to learn. When there's a lot of new material coming at us, our brains are actually only able to take in information that we can make some kind of connections to. So information that either we already know a lot about and we're picking up a few new nuggets of information, or information that we can connect to a personal experience if all we're doing is listening to words after words. Ironically, I'm just talking at you without anything else. So what does it look like? We know, or many of us know, that there's a bunch of different types of learners out there. Some of us learn better through auditory, some are visual, kinesthetic, connective learners. But most of us are a combination of a few different things. So knowing this means that we can actually understand that as learners, we need to see things in a bunch of different ways to really get the most out of it. If I'm teaching a group of people and I'm choosing only to talk at them, then chances are I'm not getting as much out of it as I can. As an educator, we're known for having very unconventional professional development. We don't necessarily have as much of the listening and taking notes as a lot of other professions. If you look at the workshops that are available on focus days for teachers, you see things like drumming for self-regulation, or making connections through finger painting with your high schoolers, teaching historical writing through storytelling, or using Ozobots to enhance critical thinking. So I've taken all of those workshops, and as a professional, I have to say, what I have gotten from these workshops has allowed me to think about how I do my job differently. I'm not really much of a finger painter, thank you, but I can tell you that when I took the techniques I learned in that professional development and I used some of them with a group of grade 11 and 12 high-risk students, the laughter and the conversations that came from it and the weird and wacky stuff we got out of it, the kids were actually able to learn in a whole new way. So not only did I become better at what I was doing, but I helped my students to connect and converse in a way that 10 lessons prior had done nothing to touch. Same sort of thing, we have these little mini robots, they're called Ozobots. And my most reluctant problem solvers, I can't get them to think outside the box. So I took this course on these Ozobots and not really knowing what it was going to do, but I ended up having this group of students having their little mini robots working through mazes and using coding to speak to them. The reason that the lessons made a difference because I was introduced to something in a way that was completely different. And now I use these techniques to make me a better educator. And I would argue that it doesn't matter what our profession is. I think that if we can learn new things in new ways and we can connect with them in new ways, then we're able to help the people we're working with in really important ways. I think, unfortunately, we often see fun as counterproductive in getting things done. And I'm going to argue that that is rarely the case. I think that at any age, that fun means that we're making deeper connections and that we're getting more out of it. For anyone who's taken part in a game jam, which you're going to hear about more, or have been a gisher Also, if you're not sure, we're going to hear more about that as the day goes on. Or if you've ever even just listened to a lecture that's full of humor, you'll find that it's often the things that we play with, the things that are out of the ordinary, that are going to bring us the most change. I think that in order for lectures or workshops to make sense, for us to take the time to sit through an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, I know we need to earn the credits, but I want to get the most out of that. I want it to be valuable, and I want it to change myself as a professional. I want to grow as a professional. For it to actually be valuable, I think it's got to be relevant. We have to be able to retain the information in some way that's meaningful, and then we have to be able to put it into place and have it make a difference to others. Otherwise, really, we're just sitting there for the sake of sitting there. And as learners, I think professional development is the perfect opportunity to engage our brains in new ways so we can bring new things to the table.
Thanks, Laurie. I have to ask you, how did you get over the hurdle of when you first were asked, like, let's do some finger painting? What was that process for you to get that buy-in? I really would like to know.
Well, for anyone who knows me, I definitely have a wacky side. The biggest question would be, why did I sign up for it? Because a lot of the sessions were full. But when I had to sit down and actually finger paint, I've got to say my first reaction was, you're kidding me, right? And I figured I'm going to sit through it. I'm going to listen to what they say, but I'm probably not going to really partake too much. Yeah, 3 seconds in, I had my fingers all in that paint. And it's incredible the thoughts and the conversations that change when your hands are stuck in finger paint. Because as you're making the circles and as you're feeling the textures, you're engaged in a way that kind of lets you a little more free to talk. And as a teacher, I do a lot of crazy stuff like that anyways.
That's awesome. Well, I'll remind everyone that you can put, because we're gonna pass it to our next panelist, but if there are questions that you really want to hear more about something that Laurie said, feel free to either put them in the chat or put your hand up. There's going to be lots of opportunity. Don't think that you're about to miss every opportunity to talk about finger painting. And why don't you give us a little bit of your perspectives?
Yeah, and I wanted to mention before I lose the thought, because as Laurie was talking about finger painting and, you know, the way you were thinking about it originally, it occurs to me that there's definitely, you know, maybe the content wasn't quite what you were thinking was going to be very helpful at the beginning, but the mode of the instruction, if you will, the actual, like, the feeling of it can be something else that you then take to other things, right? Like as trainers, some of you in the audience for sure, as you know, like working in your own talking to your own family, other ways of being able to translate and use that information as well. Sorry, I've got so many different thoughts and I didn't want to lose that one. So hello, everybody again. I am as I mentioned, with Mediate BC, and the reason I'm asked on this panel, and part of it was because a lot of our roster mediators with Mediate BC, there is a requirement for renewals every year. We have what we call a continuing professional development requirement. And because the organization Mediate BC is a public protection and public interest organization, we want to make sure that the people that we're saying, hey, hire these mediators because they're good, are actually good, right? So we have requirements around how training and experience and professionalism, and then the continuing pieces of that, making sure that people are you know, involved in new thoughts, maybe new ways of thinking about things. And I know the audience knows all that. This is not new to anybody here, but I wanted to give you the frame that where I'm coming from is from the rostering or the credentialing organization. So obviously I will only speak about Mediate BC, and know that many of you have other requirements from different organizations that you're part of. One of the things that I would encourage everybody to think about and perhaps challenge, depending on what role, which hats you're wearing, is to kind of think broadly about it. And so part of the title of this session about it being unconventional is really thinking more beyond, exactly as Lori was saying, how do we learn things? What do we learn? And it's not just the substantive pieces of whichever session that you're having to sit through, engage, think about, discuss. And so a few things that we've seen with our roster mediators over the years. And again, part of it, like in my mind, the way I would categorize it are, you've got, the very directly relevant, whether it's legal changes that are relevant to your practice as a mediator or as a dispute resolution professional. You've got, clinics that help you like refreshers, if you will, right? And those are no-brainers. We have folks that ask often, okay, well, I've been practicing for 20 years, 30 years, whatnot. Nothing is new to me. So what should I do? How can I get my 12 hours that Mediate BC requires? So this is definitely my interest in coming to this session and speaking to you all, and I'm hoping that we can have a conversation as well, and hear from some of the folks in the audience about what else and how else can we think about it. So things that we've seen include different ways of doing so, whether a different media or different format of engaging with the same types of either skills that conflict resolution professionals use, or the subject matter expertise that you may be particularly working within, whether it's insurance law or a workplace kind of environment and whatnot, or family specific, separation, divorce, whatever. And so we'll see things like, well, definitely for us, coaching and mentoring new mediators as they're coming in is huge, and that is absolutely one way to get your requirements checked. Being able to have those conversations with new mediators or peers, because sometimes you need to debrief with somebody about a particular session, perhaps. Those are great ways of doing it. We've throughout the day been talking about various forms of art, whether it's books, as somebody's written, a film, anything else really, an article, what have you. So those using those as ways of having conversations with your peers. I think all of us have been so lucky with the various kinds of groups that have been put together as a mediator lounges, as the WISBA ADR Northwest Happy Hour, the spaces where you can have those conversations. I know there's various book clubs. CORE has the reading conflicts, and media.com I know also has a monthly book club. And so all of those spaces where it doesn't really, well, from my perspective, I think it's very broad, the types of material that you could be either reading or discussing or film wise, right? So it doesn't have to be just about, we talked about throughout the day, Bill Eddy and Michael Lomax's new book. That is very content specific, of course, but I think there's lots of other things that you can also engage in. And Lori's already mentioned Gish and Game Jam, and so those are definitely on the list for as far as I'm concerned as well, because it uses the skills, and we'll hear much more from those who've actually done it about why it's important and why it's particularly helpful. I think also the other sort of categories are things that are more different context. This particular conversation, that this whole day and tomorrow, there's lots of focus on understanding in Indigenous context and what are we doing about it, and what's going for what we need to do moving forward. A cultural competency and cultural humility sort of content as well. Any of those that's not, it may not be directly relevant to your mediation practice, but those are obviously, areas that we all need to know more about and work on. I know Kelly and Samantha will be talking a little bit more about the ABA's 21-day challenges. Those have been fantastic. We put them on our newsletters for our roster mediators to let them know that these are possible. And like anything on that list are things that we're like, yep, not a problem. Definitely credit for professional development. And it's just, sorry, again, part of that is just part of it is making ourselves better humans, but also related to how do you work with your clients, right? So things around trauma-informed practice, maybe not specific to mediators or arbitrators or negotiators, but you're going to have clients that are in that situation. So how do you work with them? There's a fantastic session that I was so lucky to attend by one of the presenters, I think tomorrow, maybe Kristen Lewis, that talks about your body's reaction, and it's related to Zoom burnout that we're all experiencing. And she weaves in trauma practices in, when you have a client that you're talking to who's also on screen, who's having lots of their own reactions coming to the fore, the different things you can do to, I think one of the things I particularly remember, and again, it's that movement that helps you remember thing, is she said to put your hand under your armpit, and then this, sorry, not sit in a way that you can see. Yeah, Darcy's probably, yeah, exactly. And then your other hand up on your shoulder, and then just it's like a hug. You're hugging yourself a little bit, and then like shifting your eyes for just to make sure that different muscles are moving, things like that. Again, this is the stuff that I remember, not necessarily specific to your practice, but helpful in many, many different ways. I think we can all imagine how that would work. And more and more these days about mental health, your own, the clients that you're working with, the people that you're talking to, all of that. So I don't want to take up huge amounts of time, but I think all of these are just things to think about. And again, I recognize that I can't speak for all of the different organizations that you all may have various responsibility to be members, to be able to renew. So, there's different rules for sure. But I think challenging everybody here to kind of think broader and then doing more in that sense, if that makes sense.
That's fantastic, Anne. Thank you. And I want to acknowledge that Sharon's got a comment in the chat relating to the finger painting around having taken a graphic facilitation workshop. And similarly, once you start the buy-in, we took time to play and created an entirely new concept for something we were working on together at the time. And I think that's really important to kind of share. It's not just us, it's also there's something really special about trying new things and finding that buy-in space. Anne hinted at where we're going next. Kelly, and I know Samantha, you're gonna be part of. You guys are gonna be a lot in communication with each other. But can I ask you to launch in and let us know what cool things have you been doing?
Sure. So I'll start. This really is a duo presentation. I'm just going to maybe start with some background of kind of the what and the why this started to get rolling, and then and pass it to Samantha to kind of tell you all the great things that she helped to lead to its great heights. So as I mentioned when I introduced myself, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a mediator. I'm a litigator, and I represent employees who have been wronged, or as opposing counsel would say, allegedly. And over these many years I've been practicing, I've had a lot of clients in bias cases who've been very frustrated by D&I programming that really hasn't changed culture. And so in the constant quest to try to figure out how do we crack that, I was, just doing a lot of research and interviewing consultants and whatnot, asking what works. And through dumb luck, stumbled on a website of a fantastic diversity consultant named Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., who had developed a framework for training that is really innovative and special. And his framework is called the 21-Day Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge, trademarked. And that framework is really cool because it does something that regular trainings don't do, which is it requires the person being trained, the participant, to actually sit in a mode of learning for multiple weeks, consecutively, and really to let information kind of gel, seep in, and bubble around. So I've talked about this to folks before and said, trainings that you often get typically are like a sprint, and then they're done. And this is immersive, like a snowfall. It's heavy one day or lighter the next, or it might be heavy, 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 but whatever it is, it starts to kind of hit you and you have feelings around it. It's really powerful. And what's great about this particular program is that you create a syllabus of something you do every single day for 21 days. It's whatever you and whoever's around you that wants to create the syllabus wants to make it, with the frame of racial equity learning. And the idea is that it's short enough pieces that people aren't inhibited from jumping in because it requires so much time in the day. So really it's about like a 15-minute or a 30-minute commitment for 21 days of, listen to a podcast, doing a reading, whatever, but the same syllabus everyone does together. My practice group at the firm decided to do this because, we stumbled on this. We wanted to recommend it to companies we were suing, and we thought we ought to try it ourselves just to see what impact it has on us. And so there were 19 of us, staff and lawyers, who got together and created a syllabus. And basically everyone picked a day and they created the syllabus for that day. And we put it together. And the syllabus was really powerful for us. This was in January of 2020, those, quaint old days. And it had, Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project pieces and Ta-Nehisi Coates and the case of reparations, but also, podcasts that were very unfamiliar to most of us. Some videos that, maybe only one person had seen of a TED Talk. And someone had suggested the implicit association test that's online that people can take to understand unconscious connections. We put that together, and at some point I was talking to my friend Samantha Grant, and this was probably during the spring, and I think around the time of the George Floyd murder in the U.S. And sort of this conversation about how do we train, how do we teach people, how do we reach them, and particularly how to reach white people. And I mentioned that we had done this in my firm, and I was really high on it because it was really impactful. And Samantha then took it from there and basically brought it home into the ABA. And I'm going to turn it over to Samantha to kind of talk about what she did to kind of launch this and its huge impact.
Thanks, Kelly. And she says what I did, but it's really what we did together. We were, along the journey. I just happened to have been in a leadership role at the time in the ABA. I was chair-elect, and so I was able to sort of leverage that position to, bring this challenge to first the ABA labor employment law section, of which I was chair-elect. Because when Kelly describes it and how wonderful it sounds now, that's how wonderful it sounded to me at the time. And back then it was, shortly after George Floyd was murdered, and there was a lot of focus on the killings and murders of African-American men and women. So it was actually a really emotional time for many of us. So it's interesting to hear Kelly talk about it now, because even though it was really meaningful event, and it still is now, it's at the time it was so emotional because of what was going on, and now there's some distance between it, what then and now. But so when we were talking, and I still remember the day, I remember like I was sitting, in my room, it was a Saturday, and she was telling me this, and I knew immediately that this is something that we should bring to the labor employment law section. And so we got the support of the rest of the leadership of the section, and essentially used the syllabus. We made some tweaks to it, but the Kelly's firm's syllabus was the genesis of the syllabus that the labor employment law section used. And because after all, it's it's the ABA, so you have to be a little bit just careful in terms of what you think will pass at the ABA, because you want to get broad support to let it go forward. And so we had the syllabus. It was blessed by the leadership, and we announced it to our general membership. But we made it clear that it's not just for lawyers; anybody could do it. And so we encourage people to sign up online to pledge to do the challenge. And we had over 1,000 people sign up online, and not just necessarily sign up for themselves. Like some people were signing up like a whole law firm, like the name of the person was the law firm. So it was even many more than 1,000 people. And some people were doing it that didn't necessarily sign up online, but Kelly and I were getting email messages from, hospitals, little leagues, Rotary clubs, universities, law schools, courthouses, all sorts of, people from all around, and institutions from all around, not just the US, but also in Canada. And amazingly and wonderfully, the Ontario Law Society actually adopted the challenge and gave CLE credit for people who are doing the challenge, which was really fantastic. And through our work, Kelly and I have the wonderful opportunity to speak to Dr. Moore. We reached out to him to let him know what we were doing, and he was hugely supportive. We've stayed in contact with him over the past, year plus now that it's been. And he's really been, championing this. And we just really appreciate that he created this, concept for us to use, as Kelly said, to, have more effective, whether you want to call it training or, awareness, knowledge, because as she said, when you do these, 2-hour seminars every year or even twice a year, it sort of doesn't stick with you like, the 21 days consecutively. And we sort of mixed up the type of, mediums of, one day you could be reading a couple of poems, another day you could be reading an, article, another day you could be, watching a podcast. And so we varied the medium to, one, keep people interested, but also so that people didn't feel like, oh, I'm getting so behind reading these, articles that, admittedly, some were not within our target 15 to 30 minutes. And so, so we tried to, vary in that way, but it was very, very well received. And so then the big ABA, as we call them, we're not supposed to call them the big ABA, but we use that to refer to the ABA, of which the Labor and Employment Law is one section, found out about what we're doing, and they asked me to chair a 21-day challenge committee. And I thought, I'm not sure how we can improve upon what the Labor and Employment Law section already did, but then I thought maybe we can have themed challenges, and because this was November when we were meeting. And so I said, why don't we do a challenge for African American History Month in February? So we put together one, Kelly and I, with the help of some other folks at the ABA, the challenge for African American History Month in February. And then moved on to doing one for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May. And then we thought, even though it's a racial equity habit building challenge, why limit it to just race? And Kelly is the first self-identified LGBTQ plus leader, now chair. She's currently chair of the Labor and Employment Law section. I was the first woman of color chair of the Labor and Employment Law section, and she succeeded me. So we were sort of like the duo of first sort of, changing the way things were done. And we thought, why not have one for Pride Month in June, even though it's not, related to race, because, as we all know, they go through, not necessarily the same, but similar, challenges, oppression, etc., that, other communities, diverse communities do as well. And we called Dr. Moore and said, hey, can we sort of change the nature of your challenge and do a Pride challenge? And he was, very supportive of that as well. And most recently, we did a challenge for Hispanic Heritage Month in September. Actually runs from September to October, as you all know. And I call it Hispanic Heritage, was not the official name, but I know that some might prefer to call it Latinx or to make it, more inclusive. But the official name was Hispanic Heritage Month. We actually are trying to do one, and I actually been in contact with somebody already to do one for National Indigenous Peoples Month, although I know we're already into the month of October, but the Hispanic Heritage one ran into October because it spans 2 months. And we also plan to do one for Disability Awareness Month as well. So lots of interesting things going on. Kelly and I, also in the Labor Employment Law section, co-led discussion groups with the leaders. And so for people who are thinking about doing the challenge, if you're doing it within your own entity and organization, you might think about having discussion groups for people to get together. And at the ABA, the broader ABA challenges that we've been doing, we've actually been emailing daily discussion questions out to the people who sign up to let us know that they're doing the challenge so that they can, reflect on those daily questions themselves or discuss it with others who are doing the challenge. But I'm really grateful that Kelly had this experience and shared it with me, and a number of us have been doing it at our firms. My law firm has done a number of these challenges as well, and so it's really just taken off like wildfire. Kelly, what else?
Yeah, I mean, well, Samantha, without your leadership, I don't, we're a compliment club, but it's true. Samantha really made it happen with the ABA, and the ABA's endorsement created an opportunity for this to reach so many people. And so it's been incredible. And I think what's unusual, especially as lawyers, where we can get into this very, like, you have to convince someone of something and then it's done. This doesn't really have it's not linear that way. And yet it was so impactful, probably more impactful than anything else I can remember doing with any organization, in terms of people saying to me or to us that changed my life, or it just really opened my eyes. So what you've been talking about in terms of finger painting, and there's different ways you reach people. This was an unexpected, beautiful thing that happened during a very, very traumatic and horrible time. And I'm so grateful that that was there in that year and that continues to have an impact.
And I can see that there's some stuff coming up in chat. Lori, I can see that the last thing is you. Is that something that you want to actually talk on at all? Speak on at all?
As I'm listening through, I just cannot get over how much deeper of professional development a 21-day challenge could possibly offer. I think when I look at the brain to learn needs connection, it needs to be able to think about it and process it and do all of these different things. And when I look at the 21-day challenge, allowing people to take the time to sit in it and to play with it in a way that impacts them, in a way that they can engage in it, to go deeper where they're able, and to let go of the things that aren't as engaging. I just think in terms of learning and retraining the brain to think in new ways, I feel like it is just such a powerful tool.
I feel the same way. And Roger, I don't want you to. I'm going to circle back to your comment question here, but I wanted to ask specifically Kelly and Samantha, and in the process of sort of altering and adjusting the challenges for your specific context, like what kind of thinking did you have to do to figure out, like, oh, actually we love this, but we want to kind of include something that is maybe, I don't know if there's something that's more directly linked to your work, or if that's more in the discussion question portion. What do you do to kind of take a challenge and develop it for your own circumstance? I know that's a lot of you, Samantha.
Yeah, I feel like I talked more than Kelly, so I'm going to let her answer that question so we can try to balance out how much we talk. Because we really have been like in a partnership doing this, and I definitely want to share the floor with her.
Please.
Gosh, so I don't think there's any one way, or certainly there's no one right way to do it. I know for myself, when I've been thinking about these syllabi, I always think about like, what is the question we're trying to answer? Or what is the focus? So you could do a 21-day challenge that was racial equity, that was solely on educational access. Like you could, there's such content. I mean, you could do a challenge that was just on the 1950s. So the idea that you could cover any group in 21 days is comical, right? It's going to be so superficial. So then the question is, what questions do you want to be raised in covering in what you're doing? So what is your focus? And then within that focus, what are the questions? And then hopefully, I think if you're doing it well and putting together the syllabus, you're putting together a bunch of different voices that come from different places and amplify voices that are different from each other, and ideally are intersectional, and whatever that means for the community that's speaking. So I know the Pride Challenge that Samantha led has a lot of voices of LGBTQ folks of color. Very intentionally making sure that this, wasn't just like, what is this particular history? Because the history, is largely about the visible gay folks who are visible to whom? Visible to other like white writers or whatever. And so you're not hearing the stories of the whole community, and you have to be thoughtful, I think, about that, which I think is a benefit of that viewpoint that Samantha has led. I don't know, Samantha, if you wanted to say anything else about that.
No, I completely agree with you. And I mean, you've created, syllabus from the ground up. I'd say that, what we've done, and I say we, because Kelly and I feel like we've worked together on almost all of these. Oftentimes it's good to think about, what the themes are, and then search for, the right resources to fit with the theme, as opposed to just go into the resources first. And so, because we try to be as inclusive as possible, we thought about, okay, what are the different voices that we want to be heard that may not be heard, or that are not traditionally heard, and how what do we want to tell people? So what are the voices, what are the elements, and then we try to then go and find the resources that fit with those, so that we can be as inclusive as possible. But as Kelly said, even trying to be as inclusive as possible, you can't speak for all of the communities that make up African American community, or all of the communities that make up the AAPI community. So we just try to use the themes. But it was interesting that when we did the Hispanic Heritage Month challenge and we were putting it together, we thought, the themes that we came up with, the AAPI challenge, they're similar themes, different content, different articles, but sort of the themes of each day were almost the same in terms of the way we approached it.
This just blows me away. And I want to draw attention to the chat for everyone here right now, because between Emily and Anne, I think that they're basically all of the challenges should be findable. So links to all of these different challenges that have been mentioned. And I think one of the great things we could do at the end of this is just everyone pick one they're going to do next. And that's, I think, a really great place. I can see that I'm clearly going to be collecting these links in order to pick my next 21 days. So I think that's fantastic. Thank you.
Can I just say one more thing, Darcy?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to say, sometimes, Kelly and I try to be more disciplined about making sure that the resources were within the 15 to 30 minute mark. But even, when we try to do it in so-called, short, spurts, like 15 to 30 minutes, sometimes people just feel overwhelmed. Like, it could be that for whatever reason, what's going on in your life, or you're super busy, et cetera. So we just, really encourage people that don't feel defeated if you get behind. Not everybody actually did it like every day for 21 days, although that's the ideal, because it takes 21 days to build a habit. But, many people were catching up on the weekend, et cetera. So don't sort of, if you are doing it and you fall behind for a couple of days, don't feel like, oh, there's, no point. Feel free to, go back to it and, and get back on and keep going.
That's it. fantastic. Yeah, that's excellent. Oh yes, and thank you so much, Kelly. I just a big applause for Kelly, who has to leave a little early, because that was fantastic. I'm very, very excited. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. DA, I'd love to toss it to you to follow up if you're ready to go.
Well, how do you follow that?
I know it's rough to ask.
It's now mine's gonna feel really puny compared to. As a matter of fact, we've done the 21-day challenge at my university as well, the University of Kansas, and so this is, I believe, something that's really important, and I wholeheartedly endorse it. I'd like to start this by telling you a story. There was a young man who's the age of 12 years old, and he liked a girl in his junior high school class. He's Black, she's white. And they've given each other these glances, and they've looked at each other and decided that they actually like each other. And so after a few weeks of just chatting and talking, and she invites him to come by her house. Well, she actually lives about 10 miles from him. And this is in the state of Alabama. And so this young man gets on his bike and rides 10 miles to see this young lady that he is smitten by. And when he gets there, the young lady's father answers the door. And he looks at the young man and he says to him, why are you here? And the young man says, I'm here to see the young lady and what her name was. And the father really tried to shoo the young man away. So the young man stood there because he didn't know what else to do. He was hot, he was tired. And so he slowly began to slink away from the house. He grabbed his bike and to make the ride back home. But what the young man didn't realize was that the father had called the local police. And unbeknownst to this young man, that this father was friends with the police. And he decided to have them harass this young boy. And so the police see this young man riding his bike back to the other side of town and pull him over. Now remember, he's 12 years old. They have their weapons drawn. They order him off the bike. They grab him by his collar and throw him onto the top of the hot vehicle. They take the gun and put it to his head. And they say to him, N-word, if you ever show your face around here again, we will kill you. That young man, afraid of what was going to happen next, lost his abilities to hold his bodily fluids. When they left, he grabbed his bike and he rode home. And he never told a soul what happened to him. Stories. Stories and mass media entertainment programs have been widely used throughout the world as a powerful means to educate, inform, and influence social and individual change. The field is known as edutainment. And it is one of the ways that I use in professional development around a myriad of issues. Edutainment uses popular entertainment formats to tackle serious social issues in a bold and entertaining way. Stories can draw audiences into that center of an issue, and it moves people emotionally, and it is a catalyst for discussion and or debate. Media and popular culture influence us in so many different ways, and edutainment is a way to harness that enormous potential to influence individuals and society in a powerful way. Now, this is not a new concept. A brief history about edutainment. People throughout the world have used stories to teach, to inspire, and to influence others. Stories and oral traditions has always been an important part of African societies. And in particular, in my African-American household and culture, stories from the church perspective, right? So I'm a trained, right? I call it, some people like to call me a professional Christian, but I went to seminary at the Morehouse School of Religion. And a part of that, right, is you learn to articulate lessons through storytelling. Through stories, lessons, advice, values, and traditions are passed on from one generation to the next. The advent of edutainment as a deliberate strategy for health promotions can be traced back to 1951, when the BBC developed a radio soap opera called The Archers, which wove our agricultural issues into popular radio dramas. Now, how many of you were just captivated by that story? Don't raise your hand. That young boy was me, you know? And I had packed and pushed down that event for my entire life until what happened to George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd in 2020. It's as if someone reached into my brain, unlocked that experience, and a flood of emotions came over me. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, because I was not okay. And so I decided to write a story, right? I decided to write it as a story. And that story was entitled, "Why Do They Hate Us So Much?" Now, the goal of edutainment is social and behavioral change. Okay, so effective social and behavioral change communication interventions tend to be based on the research shows it's pretty sound theory. There are many social and behavioral change theories and models that can be used to guide your edutainment programs if you choose to engage in them. From planning to implementation to evaluation. But however, the experience has shown that the single theory or the model may not be enough to explain or guide the social behavioral change. So it's a combination of theories and models, and I'm not going to get into all of them. But I want to give you another example of a way to use storytelling as a professional development tool, as a professional development piece. So there's a concept of visual storytelling, and some of you may have heard of it. It's called the Pechacucha. Yeah. The Pechacucha it's a 20 by 20 presentation format that shows your chosen 20 images, each for only 20 seconds. And so in other words, you've got 400 seconds to tell your story with visuals guiding the way. Now, Pechacucha means chit chat in Japanese. And this creative outlet began as a nighttime get together in Tokyo in 2003. Now you got to understand, I lived in Japan for 4 years from 1999 to 2002. Oh, wait a minute, is that 4 years? Almost, 2003. And so when I had heard of this concept, but the beautiful part for me was coming and being an ombudsperson, being a part of the International Ombuds Association. They started using Pechacuchas in the International Ombuds Association process as a part of the conferences. And one of the beautiful things about this is there are, and what they've asked you to do is to take something that's important to you or the process of your life and to talk about how that impacts how you do ombudsing. And a lot of the stories that we've heard over the years have been so impactful and stayed in people's hearts, so moving. And so my dissertation is on storytelling and the impact, not only that it helps folks learn or through the process of critical reflection, but it also helps with the process of critical thinking. And what we determined, what we've seen in the process of studying this is that at least 42% of the people in that room will be doing critical thinking as those stories are being told. And so I found edutainment to be a great way to do these theories of social and behavioral change, or at least to help introduce social and behavioral change, which is why I love the 21-day challenge, which is why when I do training sessions, I tend to try to open with something impactful, sort of like what I said to you tonight. And so when you can have an audience and you can tell a story in a way that draws them in, that makes them do critical reflection, that encourages them to do critical thinking, and then now the debate, the dialogue becomes richer. And I believe the learning becomes deeper and even more intrinsic because that story will sit with them for, I'm hoping, for a long time. And I know that's how I learned growing up in my Pentecostal, Baptist-costal setting of the African-American church. There's a lot of drama. If you ever seen Black preachers on television or different places like that, it is theater, right? When they are preaching or telling, is what we call sometimes even singing the sermon. And so storytelling is an unusual way, right, to do professional development. And I'll leave it at that.
Wow, that was so powerful. Thank you. I would like to bring Roger's question in just so that I can give everyone a chance to think a little bit about it, and I want Claire to be able to chat next. So hopefully we'll give, but you might want to give an answer here, which is around nothing. Basically, several of our panelists and attendees are joy-centered individuals who inspire joy in others. Thank you, Roger. And he would like to know about our joy, how it informs our practice and development. So whether that fits in directly now with what you want to talk about, Claire, or whether it's something you want to think about and hold on to, that's something I wanted to draw attention to as a question we'd really like to.
That's a fantastic question. I think it's probably something that there's a few points I'd like to get across, and then I think that should probably be a question that we all might want to go around and touch on. So I told the other panelists this already, but I remember about 15 years ago, 12, something like that, I was in the middle of taking my doctoral classes. And they were so serious. And I had all these important academic things that I was studying and all these very serious facts and lots of data. And in the middle of it, I went to, I think it was an IOA conference where DA was speaking. And he was telling a story, and he was like jumping and moving back and forth across the front of the room. And he had everybody get down, and we were building things with straws and doing all this cool stuff. And for a split second, my head went, but I'm taking all these cool academic classes. You know, what am I doing? Like, oh, this is so silly. We're on the floor building things with straws. And you know what? Years later, I don't remember any of the stupid academic data stuff. What I remember are the principles that we learned in that class. And so I've been a huge DA fan for years, and your philosophy on edutainment. And I completely agree. So I have tried to incorporate that in a lot of the trainings that I do. And so I wanted to share a few ideas with all of you. So first, I have to share this link because I think it's just fantastic. So for all of you that were looking for a fun video to watch this Friday night, here's one on dispute resolution as taught by Mr. Rogers. And this is the story of when Mr. Rogers was asking for the funding to be able to continue Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And he sits in front of the department asking for all of these millions of dollars. And he does it by using 3 tactics: pathos, ethos, and logos. And I think when we are approaching a training, we kind of have to be a little bit more like Mr. Rogers and begin by using the pathos, right? Begin by connecting, begin by something like a story or some way where we can emotionally form a rapport with the people in front of us. And then next, ethos. There has to be an element of, I trust this person, or this person has integrity, or this person is an expert, or they know what they're talking about. And once we have done those 2 things, then according to this video, which I fully believe, that's when the elephant raises its head. So according to this video, we have our elephant with the rider. And if you've done any research on the conscious and the subconscious, the elephant is this subconscious that kind of goes lumbering along in its own direction. And we think that the rider, your conscious, is what's in charge, but it's so not in charge, right? It's really your subconscious that pulls you in one direction or the other. And the only way you can get your subconscious's attention, so the only way you can get the elephant to turn in your direction, is if you first established a pathos and an ethos connection, right? Establish some kind of emotional connection. And then your brain or the elephant kind of lifts its head up for a second. So it's probably been looking at the phone or typing away on the keyboard or planning what it's going to have for dinner. And then suddenly that elephant looks up and goes, well, there's something new here. I think I might actually pay attention for a couple of minutes. And that's really our goal, right? As trainers, is to be able to get that elephant's attention so that we can impart some knowledge or transform them, help them to be better people. So these are the key things that I want to talk about. And so I just wanted to show you a few different ways that I have tried to do something new. So I'm sending you a list, and hopefully something within this list will be helpful. This is also so that I don't forget what I want to talk about. So what I have tried to do is begin trainings, begin mediations, begin conversations now with asking people, how can I support you? How can I help you through this process? And that's kind of a sneaky way of finding out, is there anything that I should know about? Is there a learning disability, should we not be in the same room? Should we be audio only? Do we need to move at a different pace that would support you? Is there something else going on that you want me to be aware of? So first I find out, how can I support you? And then I try to take that and come up with something creative, because you know what? Ideally that will get their attention, but let's face it, it's going to get my attention as well, right? I don't want to just be standing up there and reading the same script and offering the same training that I've done before. I need to be fully engaged. And I think your trainees recognize that authenticity. So every time I do a training, I want it to be something new. What haven't we tried before? Let's go on a walk. Let's make snacks together. Let's maybe sit on the ground together and build a cool bridge with straws. I don't know, but something neat that we haven't done before that's going to get your participants' attention. And so I noticed that I was definitely paying more attention when it was new, whenever there was a change. And so I started looking into this, and I didn't get anywhere. But then in the middle of my trainings, one of my participants chimed in and said, "Oh, Claire, this is the primacy recency effect." And I had no clue. And I was like, well, yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So then I Googled it really quickly on the side. And essentially what this means is that, in college, when you're reading through something and you can remember the beginning of a paragraph and the end of a paragraph, but the middle of it, you kind of forget everything. So what's happening there is that your brain pays attention at the beginning and at the end. In other words, whenever there's a transition or something new, your elephant peeks its head up and is like, oh, I should pay attention now. There's a change, there's something new, there's a difference. And so if we can try to incorporate that into our presentations, then that's how we get our clients actually paying attention, right? And not just paying attention, but your subconscious is open, which means that you're not just throwing facts at them that are going to bounce off, but you're actually throwing concepts in that can start to create lasting and transformational change. And that's really why we do this work, right? Because we kind of care about people and we want them to be better and to have a happier, good life. So the primacy recency effect, what it said, when I initially studied this a few years ago, they said you want to switch every 10 minutes. Let's face it, none of us have attention span for 10 minutes anymore. So now they say switch about every 3 to 5 minutes. And we want to try to mix up how we're switching. So it shouldn't just be, here's my face and here's my PowerPoint. Oh, here's my face again. Oh, look, here's a PowerPoint, right? But try to do something new, like we move to a whiteboard or walk them through some kind of an example where they're using their hands, or we're drawing something together, or we're filling out a poll. There can be lots and lots of different formats that we're using. One that I really like, I wanted to share this with you. When I was face to face, I used this deck of cards. It was amazing. It's called the Feelings Cards. It's an empathy app. I'll throw this link in here. And essentially what it did was it allowed all of my clients to sit around and play poker. And we would say things like, well, at the moment, I'm feeling depressed, but I want to figure out how to trade that depression for feeling relieved. It was so much fun, right? I live in Oregon. I work with lumberjacks all day. These are not people that want to open up about their feelings, but you know what? They can play a heck of a game of poker. So I would mix it up. I'd try to find something that would really connect with people. Emily, I can see you smiling because I brought out a card game. And so thank goodness, since we've moved online, I wanted to share this with you. They have an online version. Again, I'll share you the link. No, that's not focusing. I'll just throw the link in the chat. Anyway, it's called the Empathy Set. And it's the same idea. You get to pick cards and play poker, and it's fun. And again, the main thing that we're trying to do here is come up with something new, come up with something different. One other thing that I've really learned that helps people to actually absorb information, I learned from my 2-year-old. I was trying to share this amazing knowledge with them because I was so wise and, why weren't they absorbing this? And a friend of mine said, kids really aren't actually able to absorb something until they ask a question about it. And that's kind of how you know, like if a kid's starting to ask about, why is this kid getting bullied? Then they're ready for the bullying conversation, right? Which was great because my kid had not asked about the birds and the bees yet. So I was able to push that one off for a really long time. And I think it's the same thing in trainings, right? Not that we want to teach them about birds and the bees. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that we need to help our clients to ask the question, right? We need to get them excited and interested about something because then their brain has prepared a space for it. It started to say, oh, actually, I really do want to know how to conquer this thing. I really do want to know how to forgive that person, or how to let go of this conflict that I've been holding on to for so long. And you can't give them the answer until they're ready for it, right? So you need to make them hungry for it and have them start to envision what life would be like in a different world, right? And then once they've asked the question, then you can say, but wait, there's more, and then start to provide the answer. So the final thing I wanted to mention was, since again, I think a lot of us are doing this work because we really want to help people long-term, right? Not just help with the symptomatic stuff, not just put a Band-Aid on something, but we really want to help with the transformational life changes. I think that needs to be longer than just a one-time training. You can't really learn a lot of life-changing stuff in a 2-hour session. Unless you're a really good trainer. Again, DA, I thank you so much. You taught me a lot. But for most of us, we can't do life-changing stuff in 2 hours. So I love the idea of a concept of that 21-day challenge. I think other things that we can do are encourage our clients to put reminders on their calendar, see if they can schedule us for a month down the road, send out follow-ups 6 weeks down the road. But I like those like 3 to 6 week marks because they say for a lot of us, that's what it takes to intentionally change a habit. So if we want to actually help our clients with some of this stuff, make it new, make it exciting, make sure that you're starting with the pathos and the ethos and all of that. So now we've got their attention and we're teaching them all of our golden wisdom, and then make sure that you have some kind of a check-in at the end. Okay. So this is fantastic. We're going to make these changes. Now let's break that down to a practical level. What change do you expect to see 3 weeks from now and 6 weeks from now? How are you really going to know that you've let this go? Will you be able to sleep better at night? Will you be able to talk to the person at the water cooler? What does that look like? And then help them envision that goal as they go. So those are the main pieces I wanted to share. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Claire. I'm going to it's my turn next, so I'm just going to take over and ask everyone to just let us know what you're. I'm just going to go around and call on you and ask you Roger's question here, because I want to know what is your joy. I made you think about it. I know you were actually listening to Claire, but so this will be a surprise again that I'm asking. But Lori, I'm going to start with you. What's your joy?
Well, I actually wasn't thinking, but I really was listening to Claire because I was really excited. It's really, I think for me, the joy comes in seeing change. And whether that is change in, usually it's my students. My students bring me immense joy every moment of the day. When they're asking those questions, when they're being little monkeys, they bring me joy. And so for me, education is about teaching people. And for me, the joy comes from that, And I gotta tell you, I don't get, when I'm lecturing.
Yeah.
And DA, I connected to your storytelling. I start every single day in my classroom with a story, and any new concept begins with a picture book. So I have to say that brought me such joy, because it was the moment of, it's not just geeky teachers.
Oh, that's wonderful. And or no, DA, you're unmuting. Tell me how you're feeling. What's your joy?
No, listen, Lori, thank you for that. I wholeheartedly get that. And by the way, I am a nerd. Claire won't tell you that, but I am a full-blown nerd. What brings me joy is when you see folks have that aha moment, right? When you see that what you've articulated has landed, right? And it's like boom, and somebody's like, whoa, hold on a second. Wait, I never thought about it that way. So for me, it's having that realization when folks come to this point of, I want to be different. I want to show up differently. I want to explore more. I want to know more, right? That's what keeps you in the classroom. That's what keeps you coming back to the classroom when, and I know I have a lot of my students who just are in the classroom just for a grade. And there are probably 2 or 3 in there who are actually trying to learn something. And so when you have that curiousness and they're wanting to go deeper, and I say that not just in an academic space, but also in professional development, because I work with, different companies and things like that as well. So yeah, that for me is that aha moment that encourages more exploration.
That's fantastic. Samantha, can I come over to you? What's your joy? What is the thing that sparks joy for you?
See, and I was actually taking notes and listening to Claire, and I was wanting to make sure I got everything that she said. I was copying from the chat actually. So
I knew it. I knew I was tricking you all.
Yeah, I'm like completely unprepared for the question, but I can say what brought me joy related to the 21-day challenge. One, just getting to talk with and know Dr. Moore and how gracious he was with us, taking his concept and sort of using it within the ABA. Here's this African-American man, and I remember like saying to him like, "Oh, we really appreciate it. What can we do?" Because he's a nonprofit, and we talked about donations, like etc. And he was just so happy that we were doing this and that we were bringing attention to it. And I remember him saying, "Don't get me wrong. It's not like I dislike money, but I'm not doing it for the money." And so that was really just joyful. I remember that moment and just thinking like how gracious and generous he is. And the other part about the 21-day challenge that brought me joy is, one particular person who I know really well, and we've been friends for years. And I try to, and if you've done like the challenge or you've seen other reading, if somebody's trying to tell you, how what you're saying lands with them, it's because it's like a gift that they're sharing with you. Like they care enough to have a discussion, with you. And so I try to have like that discussion, with him, and it hadn't gone like particularly well. But then he did the 21-day challenge, and when we were reading, how to be an effective ally, that particular challenge, I actually was thinking about him when it described how you should react when somebody's sharing something with you. And so when we were having a discussion group, he sent me, through the chat and saying, when I was doing reading this particular resource, I thought of you. He said to me, he thought of me and our conversation, which was so amazing. And then I said to him, ironically, when I was reading it, I thought of you too.
That's fantastic.
So that was really great that we sort of like separately, thought of each other, as we're doing that lesson.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Claire, what's your joy?
I'm sorry, I was still kind of wrapped up in Samantha's story.
I know, it's a good story.
It was, thank you. So a while ago, I got to join this missionary foreign aids group down in Nicaragua, El Salvador, one of those random wild hair things, like, let's try this. And I went down there thinking, well, I'm talking about conflict resolution. And I got there and they had billed it as breaking generational conflict. And I thought, well, no, like what I do is I do one-on-one and we help to solve this thing. And I thought, well, maybe it's just like a mistranslation. I don't know. And it was neat. I got to be there for 6 weeks. And so I was working with all of these, churches that had people going through domestic violence and like a lot of very high conflict situations. And I was trying to teach them all these principles that we all know and love. And what was amazing, and normally we don't get this experience, right? Because you're just working with people like once or twice and then you walk away. But because I got to be there for so long, I got to see these parents absorb it as their own, and then, you know, completely forget about the trainer, where it came from, but felt like this was their own truth, and then pass it down to their kids. And that, I think that was my highest joy, was realizing that this work we do isn't just, again, applying a Band-Aid to a wound, but that we really are creating lasting change. And then if people truly get it and it incorporates through their whole being, then it's not just them getting it, right? But they're passing that flame onto their friends and passing it on to their kids, and teaching them ways to honor themselves and to honor those around them. And that's definitely my joy.
Wonderful. And I'm going to come to you, and then I'm going to jump over to Emily, and then Emily, I'm going to make you fast talk. That's all. And what's your joy?
Yeah, I was having trouble with this question because the last little while, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I've been really not feeling great about things, pretty down, not being happy. And actually this conference, the way that it's come together, and the last night and today, all today, has been part of me feeling like myself again. And part of that was me thinking, okay, well, I remember Sharon doing this, the Myers-Briggs level 2 sort of session with staff at Media BC. I was really new in the organization at the time, so I didn't really know what was going on. She talks about all this stuff. I'm like, okay. And then like I knew that I was an extrovert. Didn't really understand what that meant, other than, oh yeah, I'm supposedly, I'm the type that gets energy from other people. And then you kind of go and think, oh, do I just like kind of suck other people's energy, or like, what does that mean? But she then goes into like the little bit deeper, because we ended up doing the level 2 test that gives you a bit more information. And she talks about how you've got the 4 letters, right? How the different letters interact with each other. And then things like that kind of clicked in my head, going, oh, yeah, I really like connecting with people, because I like connecting with information, and I like making the connections for people. So introducing others, or realizing, hey, there's this other person that I know, listening to somebody saying something, and then realizing, oh, there's this other person I can put them in connect or contact with, or this other piece of information. Not sure if others have noticed all throughout the day, I've been posting links and stuff in the chats. That's something that brings me joy, because that helps, it's part of that connecting, right? Connecting people, connecting information, connecting to sources of information, even though, well, by no means an expert, but I remember where I've seen certain things, and then I can put that in there. And so, so thank you to you all, actually, and Sharon and Darcy and all the folks that have been helping to plan this conference, because that has been my joy in the last little while.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, it brings me joy when you put them in the chat, because I can never find a link. So we really like that. Emily, let me come over to you, and you've got 7 minutes, so use it as you like.
All right. Well, I was going to tell something about what doesn't bring me joy. I was going to start with that, because so like before the pandemic, like I had a colleague, and he teaches ADR in law schools, and I do trainings at the agency, and we're like, hey, why don't we do like negotiation skills, negotiation theory for the people that we work with? We do all these mediations, but why don't we take like the stuff from law school and turn it into something? And we had a plan. He had a plan. I was putting off my planning. And it was going to be this 3-day class, and we were going to do these. We were going to go to a conference and give the preview, and then the pandemic hit, and like we have yet to do the 3-day class, right? Like that plan, it was gone. And instead, I had to do my very first Zoom webinar, and I had to learn how to do that at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we took the classes that we were going to do, and I had this dumb idea of like, let's just do pre-recorded videos. Like, let's sit in front of cameras and do the segment so people can do on as they engage. And so I was kind of deconstructing like what a normal class was going to be by doing little videos. And that was like the dumbest idea, because here I was showing my house. I was showing myself. I was showing myself in the pandemic on my agency's website forever. I had to learn how to do videos. It was like a huge learning curve. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the worst mistake ever. And I'll go ahead and put it in the chat so you guys can later on make fun of it. But while we were doing that, and I was like, okay, but then why don't we do like office hours? So we started doing like a monthly check-in with folks. Because we have these videos and like maybe they'll watch it and we'll come and talk. Nobody ever watches them, right? Like nobody ever watched the videos, but people showed up anyway because they were lonely too. So we started doing like monthly coffee where we just kind of gather. And then we had another conference coming up. And this is where Brenda Pryor comes in, because Brenda was helping with that conference and she's in the audience here. And she knows I pushed the envelope like a little bit too far on the engagement level, and she was right and I was wrong. But the joy I got from that was we came up with a training where I said as little as possible. I created this space where people were talking to each other and I could become invisible and people could learn from each other and connect with each other. And that felt really good. And then we had more Zooms to do. We ran out of material. So we're like, okay, why don't we invite people to come? And then I thought about Samantha, because, we had to invite people and we needed, of course, balance, labor and management. You always need balance, but permeated with diversity. We wanted to make sure, because the first speakers we thought of were not that diverse, right? And I was like, no, we're not doing that. And so we ended up with different speakers than we initially started for the first session. And it was amazing. It was amazing. It wasn't people it wasn't the people immediately came to mind. And then I realized, oh my gosh, these monthly Zooms, if I keep my mouth shut and we bring our clientele to teach each other and talk as little as possible, that also is amazing, right? But there was those videos. I didn't want to make those videos anymore. It was the tech stuff of driving the videos, like driving me nuts. So then we're working on a podcast. Like, okay, if it's just a podcast, I don't have to be on camera, right? Nobody's going to judge me how I look. It will be fine. So like, we're working on the podcast. Nobody's heard it yet, but I'm pretty casual. And my one coworker is more formal. He speaks in paragraphs. And my other coworker is sort of in between. So we're this combination of things. And here I am on this video that I'm about to release to the world. And I'm like crazy Emily, Emily who's laughing too loud whenever it's awkward, who sounds less formal. And that is really scary. And that's the part I don't like, because like when I'm putting these stuff out there, taking the risk in front of the people I mediate with, in front of the people that I'm going to have to deal with in tough cases for the rest of my career, it is super, super scary. How will they judge me? And if it's there forever and it's a recording, will I regret it? And that's a really scary moment. But look, I'm learning video. And gosh, Darcy, you've taught me so much. Seriously, like the light that's in front of me is like you and I talking about lighting. And on the audio, oh my gosh, we're lawyers, we write, maybe we speak, but recording and thinking about audio and the quality of a recording, that's a whole new skill set. So it's learning and growing. All right, so back to joy. What do I get joy from? So Roger, that was your question. I get joy from being so engaged in something that I can forget to like doom scroll and on what's going on Twitter. Because some of you know I spend too much time on social media, and I spent a little bit too much time on Twitter trying to during this pandemic, and it's a depressing place. So what I had opportunities to connect and partner and come up with something creative and new, that was joy. And so many of the people that I have done that with before the pandemic and especially during the pandemic are here today. So I just want to thank you. If I haven't worked with you yet, I want to work with you. Let's partner. Let's come up with something. Let's create something. But so many of you in so many different ways. I mean, that's the joy. That's the joy space of coming up with something and doing something new. So
that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Oh, Anne,
I just want to say, Darcy and Emily didn't quite get to Gish and Game Jam because we hinted at it at the beginning, but we didn't come back to it.
Don't worry. We can come up with that in the next block. Don't worry. We got you.
It'll come back. I knew exactly where we knew when it became clear that we were going to go a little over. We knew Emily and I will talk more in this next panel. I'm sure I'll be able to chat. I do want to just throw into chat the link to CORE Conflict Resolution Society, which is where I do a lot of the things that bring me joy and a lot of the and offer a bunch of interesting kinds of professional development opportunities. So if you watched the careers panel on Tuesday and were really excited by some of the things I was talking about there about media analysis as discussions and writers accountability groups, that is something that we offer at CORE. And so I'm just putting it in, come find us. We've run out of time, so just come find us. That's where I am. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming and joining me on this fantastic panel. You all bring me joy. And you, audience, bring us joy. Thank you so much. And Kelly, who had to leave early, absolutely huge thank you to her. This was incredible. I feel like I learned so much, and we could talk forever, so let's not. But we'll talk again another time instead. How about that?